said to be from Misurata, that appears to show more soldiers joining the protesters' cause. Libya's head of special forces, the latest Gaddafi ally, now rallying for his removal.
I place all my expertise and capabilities at the service of the youth revolution. I urge all honest members of the special forces to rejoin their units immediately and to protect the gains of the February 17th revolution and protect the lives of the Libyan people and their property.
And this video shows exactly why Libyans need protecting. Heavily armed men drag away a limp body and stuff it into a car. Uploaded on YouTube, it also can't be verified, but is said to be filmed in Tripoli during Friday's clashes. Painting a different picture, these images, shot by Associated Press on a government-sponsored media offensive under the restrictions of Gaddafi loyalists.
Tripoli is 100% safe. There are no problems. People are going about their business. There are no problems and people are going to work.
It would seem this vision is about as useful as state television to show what's really happening in Libya, or just how much longer its under-siege leader can hang on. Most of the oil-rich East has fallen into the hands of the opposition. There is a sense of security, but it's a volatile situation. The opposition also says it has taken control of oil refineries, now operating at a minimal capacity. For people here, the most important is to retain the gains, keep the momentum, while they wait and see what happens in the west of the country. Hud Abdul Hamid, Al Jazeera, Eastern Libya.
Let's take it back to Tripoli for a moment, explore what's been happening there. A short while ago, we spoke to someone in the capital who told us that pro-Gaddafi forces were again firing at protesters there. Have a listen.
We marched forward towards Al-Hani area. It is close to the house of Aisha al-Qaddafi. When we came closer, security personnel were waiting for us. They started first firing tear gas at us, and when they saw rallies and masses, more than 10,000 people coming towards them, they started to fire live rounds. This was concurrent with the speech given by Muammar al-Qaddafi at that time. Everyone started to take refuge, and we started to run into streets and alleys. At that point, the personnel started to follow us, and they were firing randomly at any moving object.
So the citizens, I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir. I just want to get some more details. That the citizens were armed. What sort of weapons do you think they had, and how were they using them?
Residents were not armed. We were peacefully marching. Only the security personnel, all armed with Kalashnikov, then followed by Mim-Ta heavy machine guns. It was the security personnel who were armed.
And what's it like just now? Have things become a little quieter in the evening, or can you still hear the gunfire?
Yesterday, last night specifically, we found it very difficult to go back home. Following the rallies, security personnel started to follow us, hunting down and firing at any gathering, at any moving object. Not only to intimidate the demonstrators, they started to intentionally kill them. Last night, as I said, following Friday prayers, which is at noon, I managed to go back home very late. It was very difficult, and I used side roads and very small alleys to go back to my home. The Revolutionary Guard, which is the presidential guard of Muammar al-Qaddafi, started to hunt down any person they see in the street.
Now, new videos emerged from the eastern city of Al-Bayda. It shows one of Muammar Gaddafi's palaces. Look at it, parts of it destroyed during the unrest, as protesters tried to take over the city and expel the pro-Gaddafi forces. The palace had iron doors leading to underground tunnels, which are said to go on for several kilometres. Look at Benghazi as well, where many banks have reopened in that opposition-held city. It's a sign that life could slowly be getting back to normal. Dozens of Libyans lining up outside a bank which had closed for days during the violence, which drove pro-Gaddafi loyalists out of the city. Protesters there have been out sweeping the streets, trying to get things back to normal. Some worried, though, about food supplies and whether the hastily formed town council can provide basic services. And as the banks reopened in Benghazi on Saturday, the Libyan government has begun offering financial sweeteners to the population. The official AlJazeera television agency ran 2 urgent announcements by a so-called popular committee. The first of them offers all families 500 Libyan dinars, which is around $400 US. The second tells unemployed graduates to go to their nearest bank for a loan. Despite the country's vast oil wealth, about 2/3 of Libyans live on less than $2 a day. Foreign migrants from Libya streaming into neighbouring Tunisia to escape the violence. They include many Africans simply running for their lives for fear of being mistaken for mercenaries. Nazneen Mashiri with this report from the Tunisian-Libyan border.
Libya is one of the most dangerous places in the world right now if you're black and African. Anti-government protesters thought Seydou Boubacar Jalou and his friend were mercenaries. Pro-Gaddafi forces targeted them for being foreigners. In the end, these Malians fled for their lives by night. They say the roads out of the west are still in the hands of those loyal to Gaddafi.
They were wearing army uniforms, they have berets, everything that an army has. They have Kalashnikovs, handguns, machetes, clubs. 15 kilometers from a small town, we saw a Libyan tank. The situation is very, very dangerous. Every day there are more than 100 who die. Every day there are shootings. The most dangerous situation is for foreigners like us, and also us, black people, because Gaddafi brought soldiers from Chad, from Niger. They are black and they are killing Arabs.
120 kilometers from this Tunisian border, Zawiya. The town is now in the hands of the people. But Egyptian refugees describe a bloody massacre on Thursday, which left many dead.
I was in Zawiya's Martyrs Square. There was a group of army men in the square who attacked the protesters. It was a very fierce confrontation. They were using heavy weapons, at least 15 to 20 dead, and I had footage of what happened, but the Libyan authorities on the border took my phone. Gaddafi wants to commit a crime with the absence of any media.
The problem for journalists right now is that this is as close as we can get to Western Libya. We have to rely on first-hand accounts of people coming across this border, many of them too frightened to talk about what's happening there. There are still very few Libyans crossing into Tunisia. Most of these people are Egyptian migrant workers who fear reprisals from Gaddafi forces if they ever return. Libya is where they found work and built their lives. They now have an uncertain future. Nazneen Mashiri, AlJazeera, on the Tunisian-Libyan border.
Here's Ibrahim Shakir with us in the studio from the Brookings Centre in Doha. Lots happening again. It's not as frantic, if you like, as yesterday, but still plenty going on. Saif al-Islam's been speaking again publicly. It's interesting, he and his father seem to almost tag team the way they're talking, and the same lines again, the same defiance, even as it looks like the whole of, or much of Libya, bar Tripoli, is no longer under their family control.
It really doesn't surprise me to hear what we heard from Gaddafi, because Gaddafi has been consistent of being completely detached from reality and disconnect, because that's the behavior that he showed over the past probably 2 decades. However, the biggest really disappointment is coming from Saif al-Islam, who's first of all is a graduate student of the London School of Economics, and also his very interesting is that his even thesis is on how to bring democracy and improve governance. So to see this is coming from Saif al-Islam, that's a big disappointment, because he also started this initiative of Libya Tomorrow 3 years ago, and many bought into this argument, including the Muslim Brotherhood. So it's really disappointing that for him to be consistent with his father and with the claims that they're making. I was
just going to say, how important is it what he says compared to what Muammar himself was saying yesterday in this address?
Actually, it's quite important, and it's very alarming, and it's very dangerous, because I was really hoping that Gaddafi would pressure his father, or to provide this bridge, this link between what's happening on the ground and his father. But unfortunately, he's playing a very harmful role in this point. At this point, and he has connections with the special forces, although he doesn't occupy a formal position, but he has connections with the special forces and with the regime, also all of them, and he has a family impact. And we need to keep in mind, if something to come out of this, a resolution, one hopeful area is actually through a family pressure, a family impact on Gaddafi. I was really hoping that Saif al-Islam in particular would play this role, as he's the one that he was groomed to follow his father, to take his father's position, and to try to pressure his father. But unfortunately, the role he's taking, or the path he has chosen, is totally the opposite.
I don't know if you used it intentionally, but you said the R word in that answer, the revolution. You called it the revolution. I mean, it certainly looks like it. It's not that until Gaddafi falls. How long do you think that could be, or till Tripoli falls, because this is the last stronghold, this is where we're focusing?
Exactly, you are absolutely right, Kamal, as we need to consider Tripoli, and Tripoli is the last place. I think it's going to take some time, because the pattern that Gaddafi and his son have showed so far, it's a pattern of resistance, a pattern of defiance, a pattern of giving up, and we started even talking today about some scenarios to end this crisis, and some scenarios, the ones that they came up, actually mostly about him committing suicide or being killed or disappear. So none of the scenarios came up in our discussion today. It's something about him leaving the country or surrendering. So it's all three different scenarios of either being killed or committing suicide or disappearing are all really frightening, and they all indicate that the most tangible, the most these scenarios is that he would resist, he would continue to fight, and that we should continue to see defiance. However, I remain hopeful that from the people around him, the inner circle around Gaddafi, we will be pleasantly surprised of seeing something coming out of that from there, and someone that would make difference and put a closer end to this crisis and this revolution, and where the revolution will be successful.
Okay, Ibrahim, thank you for your thoughts. Ibrahim Shakir from Brookings Centre, Doha, with us. Lots to take in, obviously, with Libya. Let's recap some of the main points for you. A funeral for one of the protesters reportedly killed by pro-Gaddafi forces in Tripoli on Friday. It's turned into a march, hundreds of people joining in with that one. Residents of the capital saying the regime is also arming civilian supporters who are setting up checkpoints and patrols around the city to quash dissent. That is Tripoli. This has been